Okay. Hi, everybody. My name is Cassandra. My primary interest is in animal learning, behavior, and cognition. I have a lot of work with various species of animals. I've worked with elephants, tigers, lions, leopards, anteaters, etc. But I recently worked as a dog trainer, specifically, and my favorite part actually was working with service animals. So service animals are considered working dogs. So we have a lot of common training aids that we might use when training. So there are various working dogs. So here we have a hunting dog. Now, pay attention to this training aid. This is a dummy. So this would be thrown, dog would retrieve it, and this is practice for hunting. Over here, we have a target stick. And I know you guys are probably like, why is there a seal there? Seals have pups. Alright. And lastly, here we have an attack dog. Now this is protective gear that a person who would be attacked is going to be wearing in order to protect themselves during the training. So take a good look at those different common training aids. Alright, and now let's talk about Canine Sight. So this is what you might see on a scale, as long as you're not colorblind. So, now dogs, on the other hand, it was determined using these Ishihara tests. So if you can see the 15, you are not colorblind. Ben is colorblind. So using similar Ishihara tests, more specifically like with cats or dogs in the photo, they were able to determine that dogs have something that's similar to red-green colorblindness. So instead of this scale, we have this scale. Now, this led me to think about these common training aids. Is there an issue with them? Yeah, I think so. So here we have some camouflage. Camouflage is green. Was that on our scale? No, red-green colorblindness. Again, we have a red target here, not on that color scale. And here we have black, which isn't necessarily on the color scale, but is also not very appealing. So this led me to consider the Canine Sight aspect of my study. Now, leading into Canine Perception, so dogs, their primary use for searching for their prey would be to use their sense of smell. But then they have to switch into vision. And to do that, they use mostly motion in order to see. So as you can see here, this is very eye-catching. It's much more intense for a dog as well. So dogs have shown the ability to distinguish between their own species, species of prey, and then other predator species. So that led me to consider the shape component of this, because those are different. They're much more complex shapes, but for the purpose of this study, we kept it a little bit more simple. So my hypothesis was that the present study aims to prove that existing characteristics of training aids, such as the aid's color or shape, may impact the quality of training in a working dog. So we had to find our subject first. There were a couple of requirements in order to be my subject. The first was previous training as a working dog in order to facilitate the training that we would be undergoing. This is pretty complicated stuff, even though it doesn't necessarily sound like it. So we also wanted to make sure that we used an impure breed dog, and that was just to hopefully stay away from those breed-specific characteristics. So it just so happens that my own dog fit those categories. And so this is Cheyenne. She's awesome. She's about 4.5 years old, and she's a female. So you'll be seeing her. So our methods consisted of a 3-stage process. We had stage 1, which included both colors and shapes. So colors was A, shapes B. Then we had another stage, which, again, colors A, and then B shapes. And then a third stage, which actually combined both of these stimuli. All right, so our first step was to train the subject to discriminate between colors. So here we have video of where we wanted to be at the end of this, okay? So that's what you're looking at. You can see these, this is actual video that we used in order to determine our results. So we began with introducing these individual stimuli one at a time. And here is that for your better viewing. Now, the order that they were introduced was first was blue, second gray, third brown, and then fourth was yellow. And then we paired the stimuli. So we had blue, gray, and brown, blue, gray, brown, and yellow. All right, so our second step was to train the subject to discriminate between shapes. I don't have a video for this one because we kind of stopped there. All right, individual stimuli was introduced at one at a time, like as in the first category. So we have our shapes here, and they were introduced in the order of triangle, square, circle, and then star. Again, they were paired, and so we had triangle with square, circle, triangle, square, circle, and star. So the third stage was the combination of both shapes and colors. So this is what it ended up looking like. So we had 2, then 3, then 4, all the way down to 8. Okay. Now, I want to remind you guys of the whole reason that we were doing this, and that was because I wanted to find out if the AIDS color shape may impact the quality of training in a working dog. So in order to measure that, we definitely took note of the time that it took in order to train a behavior. We counted the number of commands, so the commands used were appropriate to that particular stimuli, so we used blue, gray, or star, triangle. We also took into note the number of corrections that were given, so no, return, that type of thing. And then we also took note of displacement behaviors. And displacement behaviors are behaviors that the dog uses in order to communicate some type of stress. So because they can't tell us, I'm stressed, they do elicit some behaviors. So that might look like inappropriate yawning, inappropriate scratching, excessive drooling, and in some cases, this. Ooh, shy! Yeah. So training dogs is always fun, but yeah, you don't always get what you want. Okay, so our results of the stage 1A, which was the colors, so the individual colors that we introduced took, the initial one, which was blue, took almost 32 times more than the rest of them, and you can see that here. So here we took 27 minutes and 53 seconds in order to train that the initial behavior. And then as we moved on to our second level, which was the second stimuli, it's gray, and then brown and yellow. So yellow was the shortest time, and that was 33 seconds. This was to be expected, and actually the rest followed suit. So those other things that we were measuring, like number of commands, number of corrections, and the number of displacement behaviors. This was completed in just 2 sessions. This was a different story. So initially Cheyenne had some trouble discriminating between gray and blue, and you can see that here. So if you guys think back to the other one, that one took 27 minutes. Here we have 93 minutes and 12 seconds. And then, let's take a look back at the commands. Here we had 264. Now we have 609. So yes, we did get very stuck. And the problem is that blue and gray were the first to be introduced together. So there must have been some issue between those choice colors. So eventually we did move on, and that took 7 sessions. So the average session was about 15 minutes. But it ended up being that the addition of more variables facilitated her ability to continue learning. And an additional 4 sessions concluded stage A. So things did move along a lot more quicker after that. So first of all, we're led to think, is gray actually a problem color? So I went back into looking at that scale, and gray's not really on there, so maybe it was just a poor choice of mine. But like I said, being able to add those different variables did definitely help her continue learning. So I'm not sure what that was. Maybe she's thinking this is just a white block instead, and it looks different than all the rest, as opposed to only having something else to compare it to. Another thing we want to make sure that we discuss was that the additional variables help to discriminate between those problem variables. And then there might have also been some clever Hans effect going on, which, if you guys don't know, was a course way back when. He was actually trained to read the faces of people in order to react the way that his trainer had wanted him to. So this would have looked like for her, she might have been watching my facial expressions or my excitement to her behaviors in order to choose the correct one. So I did change it up a little here and there. I switched different variables around. Sometimes I said stop. Sometimes I gave her a lot of corrections. Sometimes I didn't. Just kind of waited until she got to the right one. So we switched it up a whole bunch of times just to keep that kind of going. And thank you guys. So are there any questions? Yes.
So you trained her with the pictures and the colors, right? Have you noticed that that's been applicable to like toys, or will she recognize colors?
Well, I would imagine yes.
Okay.
And that's kind of interesting that you mentioned that, because I was trying to apply this to working animals, but I mean that's so much more generalizable across like literally the entire population of domesticated dogs. Yeah, so that might actually be something. Toys are probably more made to attract the human as opposed to the dog. So yeah, maybe that's something that needs to go into consideration when making dog toys. So thank you.
So that is super interesting. First off, I'll say that.
Thank you.
It was really interesting, and it's definitely, it makes me curious more on the vision when you said that it's similar to the red-green color blindness that he is, and blue and gray it depends on the shade. So gray gets mixed up with a ton of colors, like pink and purple, but it depends on the shade, so like lighter colors. So I wonder if you had done this, or if you do it in the future, with different shades of the same color and see if certain ones are higher or lower for the responses? Yeah,
that would make sense. There's definitely, if you were to look back at that scale, there's definitely a gradient of colors. So it's just, this is another question of would the dog be able to discriminate, and at what point would it be able to discriminate?
Right.
Thank you.
Any ideas whether your previous relationship with this girl, good girl, may have impacted training and therefore results?
Yes,
I'm guessing you trained her to do other things.
Yeah, she's gone through a lot of training. As I said, she was trained as a service animal previously. So yes, she and I do have a special connection, and yes, that may have facilitated her ability to learn these things. But also, when training an animal, it's typical that that animal does create a bond with their human. So, of course, it could have affected it, but I can't imagine it not affecting any study where dogs are used. That's just great. They love you. Thank you. Do you have a question?
Yeah, if you could go back to the 4 videos on the question slide.
Yeah.
So, these are the videos from the stages where you were teaching Cheyenne to discriminate between colors?
Yeah.
So is it that red, is that blue and gray where she got stuck? Was that the one that took the longest?
So here, this was the first variables that were introduced individually. Here, we moved on to the 2 variables, and that is definitely where we got stuck. So I just took samples from throughout the entire footage. Here was that addition of more variables, the 3rd variable and then the 4th variable. These are different videos. I just thought I'd show you guys.
And did the addition of the extra variables help her then learn gray?
I think so. Yeah, she was much more able to identify the gray. And as I said, I'm not sure if that's because she's like thinking, oh, maybe this is just a white block and this is different from the rest of these shapes or the rest of these colors. I guess they'll never know.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of interesting as an educator, because a lot of what we do is we don't move on until students understand a certain kind of concept. And I'm just wondering if this maybe provides evidence that maybe you should move on, and the moving on actually helps. Because it's one thing if, you moved on and sure, brown versus blue was learned, but gray was still,
Right.
out there. But if adding the brown helped to learn the gray, that's yeah.
And that
Pretty
makes total
interesting.
sense. So first of all, historically, dogs have been used in order to understand human behavior a little bit more, or human learning, that type of thing. Also, I know I'm a peer mentor, so I tutor students. I know I tell my students, like, if you're not getting it, move on. So I tell them not to wait till the end of the page on the exam. Not to wait until the end of the exam. I tell them to wait till the end of the page, because some of those things might jar some memories or put them in the right place to where they can remember the correct answer or whatever. So yeah, it makes total sense that might affect it. Thank you.
All right. Any other? Yep.
So, I don't know anything about training dogs.
No worries.
But I noticed in your videos that in some of them you're sitting down versus you standing up.
Mhm.
Now, with that interaction, that close proximity to her, is that influencing how she is able to take in what you're trying to teach her just because she's reading you more closely and she's like, watching your body language? Did you notice a difference?
Okay, so let me explain why that happened, first of all. So here, this is like literally the very beginning. So I was just trying to teach her, like, what I want you to do is come up and nose at this particular thing that's on the wall. So that's why I'm sitting right there, because I'm literally holding some turkey right on the wall for her to come and grab it and then automatically give her a reward. Over here, you would see me standing. Here, let me. So over here, you see me standing. That's just me starting to distance myself away. And this is only one out of those 7 videos that with the 2 variables that we had. So I actually started moving farther and farther away as we continued the process. So here you don't see me at all. Here you don't see me at all. And that's because we were gradually distancing from that. Once we learned that what we want is to go and touch the thing, and then I get a reward. So it's all part of shaping that behavior. Thank you.
All right. Any other questions? Okay. How about one last round of applause for all our presenters today? An amazing job. And thank you to everybody for attending.